Hello, everybody. Drasco here from uplevelmind.com, where my main mission is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs who know all the business strategies realize their next revenue milestone by mastering what's between their ears. And for today's episode, we have a real talk segment where I bring in a heart-centered entrepreneur who isn't seeing the consistent, stable growth in their business. And then live on the call, I get to help them get out of their own way on one inner challenge that they're currently experiencing towards their next business upgrade. And for today's guest, we have Aaron Young, who is a business and life coach from Australia. So Aaron, thank you very much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm great. A little nervous. The reality of what we're diving into, it's always interesting as a coach to have someone take the scalpel out, which is good. Like I said, the nervousness is excitement, but also, you know, I've got a fair idea. I think I know what it might be. And I've got a feeling you might turn that backwards and it's not. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Well, to be fair, it's always funner on this end than on the receiving end. So yeah, I don't blame you. I've been there plenty of times myself, but yes, it is to be expected and it is normal. So as I said before the recording, I always appreciate you and anybody else who decides to come on to do this, because it does take that level of vulnerability and courage. I think that always says more about the individual than anything else. So before we dive into all of that, I'd love for you just to tell us, like, who are you exactly with regards to, like, why do you do what you do? How did you get started in doing what you do? Just kind of give us your story and then what brings you here today.
All right, let's try and keep this short and brief. So I spent 10 years in Africa. In that 10 years, I found myself helping people and not really understanding the nature of my gifts and skills. I did more and more of it. And I was at that time working with elephants and lions. I was a behavior specialist and moving them about all over Africa. But in that work, something sort of shifted in me and I started working predominantly with addicts or accidents, heavy trauma, and this sort of again bubbled up, and there was this gift, just this presence. I wasn't trained at this point. I was just being me. And as I went further and further along, I kept having these what I can only describe as like God moments, where I would be working with or with a group of people and I would talk for half an hour, 40 minutes. And at the end, I couldn't really remember it, but I had people just jaws on the floor and I was saving people and I couldn't understand it. So that was like 5 or 6 years ago. Sadly, I left Africa with a gun at my back after a couple of prison stints there and lost my kids to Africa. They're still there. I came back to Australia after 15 years in total abroad and no one would touch me. You know, first world bureaucracy and my CV don't match. So no one wants to give you a job. So I think, you know, again, maybe a universe or God pushed me towards this. Guy popped up and was selling life coaching courses or master breakthrough courses. And I started to do a little bit of training, started to formalize it. And then I looked back on my life, went back on the life stories, looked at it. I was abducted at the age of 5. Mum was an addict, my own addiction issues in my 20s. And then it all started to unravel that my life was a continuous series of blessings. Now, I didn't see them all the time, was that these weren't an accident, and that the man I'd become, especially being forged in Africa, was this guy who had an incredible gift and set of skills to help. But I'm 48 and I only started this sort of in the last 4 or 5 years. And even through my own work, I'm not quite sure I've dealt with a lot of the other people in the past, especially.
Sorry, so I'm actually not able to hear you right now. I don't know if it kind of sounds like your microphone got covered. Nope, still can't hear you.
Okay, so the reason I'm here today, I think, is basically because in all of that story, there are little bits and pieces that I've picked up and stuck into that belief section of my mind that halt me. And, you know, the word failure comes to mind with my kids. There's, you know, possibly issues from when I was a kid. I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been given a gift. I've been given a life that's full of blessings and full of incredible depth, but I don't seem to be able to use it properly. I stumble and start. I stall, uncertainty, doubt, and worry. You know, the stuff through your workshop, which was very clear to me that I'm at this point where I do a lot of things, but I think that the beliefs are driving the things I'm doing and I'm missing something off to the side because I've got blinkers on.
Got it. Okay. So and just to make sure that, you know, I've heard you correctly, like it sounds like you have this very unique life story that ultimately gave you the set of gifts that in the moment when you do use them, they deliver quite potently. But then when I go forward and I try to intentionally use them, it seems like there's something that then falters and makes me unable to actually utilize all of these things. So does that resonate or like sum it up?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. That's on the money.
Okay. So in that case, I mean, I know you mentioned, okay, so I stumble and I start. What are the general patterns that you see in your business?
The normal pattern is to go on a huge big push social media or networking through past clients. I'll have a couple of clients pop up, I take them on, and where I seem to get to is I'm not what I would say a typical coach. I use a lot of my breakthrough. I don't relief.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll get some clients, and what tends to happen with me is I'm not, I would say, what you call a typical coach. I use a lot of breakthrough techniques. I don't push for relief. I push for change. And I wouldn't say I'm possibly called brutal with compassion. So I don't like relief. I don't want someone coming to me to tell a story and feed a victim. I go right for where I see the results. And what tends to happen is my clients don't want to go there. They want the relief. And when I get faced with that, I see that as a massive failure. You know, they've invested in me, and some of them quite heavily, and I get them to this point and they just stop. You know, and look, a lot of the stuff, as we know, can be kind of confronting. And I just get this, my gut says this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. If I can't get them over the line, if I can't get them past that precipice, then I can't take money for serving relief. You know, for me, that's just, I know it's just me. I feel it's sort of kind of unethical because I know there's more that maybe I'm failing. I'm the one not inspiring them. You know, I'm the one not giving them what they need to get over that point.
Got it. Okay. So it seems like, and again, I'll just summarize because I know we had some of those technical issues. So I had originally asked you, okay, so you have this unique story. When you are in your element, like you can deliver that transformation, and suddenly when you try to do that intentionally, it seems to falter and kind of fall flat. And then I asked you, okay, so what is it that, like, what are the patterns that you see manifesting in your business? And one of the things you said, okay, so I stumble to like start, or I go and then I stop, and just kind of that, it sounds like the feast and famine bit. Like I do really well, and then like nothing happens, and I panic, and then I do something again.
Yeah.
And that was a whole, okay, so I push to get clients and then stop. When I am working with people, right, I want to elicit that change. So like you said, I'm brutal with compassion, but that's because I want the clients to get to the root and actually make some change as opposed to just get some relief. So
Yeah.
it kind of sounds to me like, because you're saying the clients don't want to go there, it's like you're working with the wrong people.
Yes.
But you're actually internalizing that as failure on your end. So
Yeah.
then it spins into your own wounding, and then kind of we get into a stop phase. And okay, so that all
spot on. You couldn't have said it better.
okay, perfect. So there's a bunch of different things going on there. Obviously, we can't get to all of them. Which one do you think is the most relevant for you?
The last one. That right, because I know I don't attract the right people, and I believe I'm not attracting them because of me, not because of them, and I don't blame them for when they don't do the things that, you know, I look at myself. There's something within me that obviously doesn't. I'd like to call myself a performance coach, taking people who are relatively okay beyond, so that you've got a group of people who are exceeding. Instead of what happens is I'm still in that trauma or still in that side of it and not taking away from it. I've done enough of that work. It's very hard for those people to get past because, as you've just said, there's a lot there that you can't really fix in 3 months. So it's about me understanding how I can get past this wound to attract the type of client I need for my business.
Okay. So in that case, if you know that you're attracting the wrong people, what are you doing before you say yes to work with them?
Feeling sorry for them.
Okay. So tell me
more. It's sympathy. It is that empathy. It's like, I can't say no to someone where I feel like I might have been in their shoes. But I also think the language that I use, possibly the content I create, it's also possibly in the way I come across, in that I'm not going to attract that set performance client. because there's something within my language, within my body language, something that I'm holding on to that people just, I'm not attracting that type of person.
So that sentiment that you feel sorry for people, that you can't say no to anybody, that you don't want to deny anybody your help, like that's kind of how you're approaching these interactions, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it true that you're actually that you're actually helping everybody?
No,
Who are you not helping with those conversations?
myself. But I don't think I'm helping them a lot of the time, because serving that sympathy doesn't necessarily help people.
So it doesn't help them, and it also doesn't help you.
Mm.
So if you're aware of that, you're aware of that quite quickly, why do you think it's hard to change that pattern?
Because I can possibly see myself in them. So it's a case of trying to save myself via these people.
And can you save yourself by saving others?
No, no way.
No. And right now, how is that impacting your business?
Well, it's a failure. That's not a business at this point right now. There's other option. I've got a young son, but realistically, that after this phase of being a dad, I don't know if I'll go back to it. And it's kind of sad, because I believe that I've got an immense amount to give, but I'm just not in a healthy state, as we're discussing now, to be able to do it, I think, in the way it should be done or could be done.
Well, that's because your view of the business is completely and utterly distorted. Like right now, the business is a proxy to save yourself through saving somebody else who is at or was where you're at, but that's not the purpose of the business.
Yeah.
So what comes up for you when I reflect that back?
Oh, I feel sick. There's literally borderline on edge of tears, because again, it's how quickly it came out, but then as it came out, I didn't know it at the same time. So it's kind of sad. And it sort of makes me just, like, again, it's that feeling of failure. Like, what am I doing? I've got, just massive weight.
So by all means, feel free to be with that, because it's a lot that's coming out. And again, I applaud you for going there. What I would invite you to consider is that a failure?
Part of me wants to say no, but there is a part of me that definitely still believes yes.
Beautiful. So that part of you that believes yes, what does it say?
I go straight back to my kids. There's a massive amount tied into this idea that I've failed them. And so every time I fail, or I see myself as failing in my life elsewhere, it's compounded by about 100.
And what I would invite you to consider is that the actions that you're taking, I speak to people who seem to be like me, that I feel like if I save, I will save myself. And even though I know that's impossible, ultimately I keep doing it, the whole time reinforcing that I'm a failure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So how do you feel when that's reflected back to you?
Angry at myself. There's a fair amount of power that just surges through me that says, just stop coaching and go get a job and focus on the simpler things. Stop trying to do this type of work.
And what if you took actions, or actually, okay, let's change it up even more. If you couldn't think the thought that I'm a failure, who or what would you be?
Wow. What wouldn't I be? I'd be public speaking. I'd be running the men's group I've created and never gone forward with. I'd be doing my meditation and breathwork courses in the mornings on the beach for free. I'd be working with a good mix of performance clients and then pro bono work with, troubled teens. I'd be being the person I think I was put here to be.
So in essence, it sounds to me like you'd be taking actions that are aligned with resolving all of the problems that you have right now, because they would be actions rooted in not proving continuously again and again this false idea that I'm a failure, but instead rooted in the vision and the wants and desires of what I want.
Yeah, and this is where I think I'm at right now, and I'm trying, and I work with people, I do the courses, I start, and then it's the same thing. These aren't clients, but these are local men I work with, and all of a sudden everyone doesn't pitch to a session, and again I go back at that same feeding that thing. I see that as a failure. So that's like when you say what you've just said, I agree, but then there's also a part of me that says maybe I'm just not who I think I am.
Or maybe you're everything that you did think you are. You just repeated the opposite, that it's more familiar to you than the actual truth of how big you can be and are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's coming up for you when I reflect that?
Yeah, honestly, tiredness. Been doing this for quite a while. The thing is this wound may be the last 5 years with regards to the business, but this wound goes way back 48 years, so it's always incredible to see it, but then there's also this sense of me now that just wants to sort of like fold shoulders over and just sort of give up a bit. And I'm sorry for that. I wish I was more inspiring that, but I'm just tired because now I see this wound. It's been playing out since forever, and that's, again, it's kind of sad. It's I have tried. I believe I've tried, and I'm not going to say I've tried hard enough because I wouldn't be sitting here if I had. But oh man, I've tried. And again, like to sort of look at it and go, I'm still not at that place. It's kind of sad, but also I get angry with myself because I know as it comes out, you see it, and you're like, what am I doing?
So I would actually challenge that and say, instead of I've tried, I would say you've tolerated a whole lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
But your standards for what you're willing to rise to are actually quite low.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say you're wrong.
Do you think there's any good news in that?
Initial reaction, no, but then straight after that, yeah, because these sorts of moments of freedom, once you get handed that knowledge, you can then take action on it and turn it into some wisdom. Right now, listening to you, no, like I feel gutted, if I'm honest, and I just feel like I want to give up, but that's not who I am. If my life tells me one thing, is I don't do that. I go through phases which are relatively short, and I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like finding you is happening now. I've just got to, I guess, find out the next step, work the next step.
100%. And what I would add to that is what I see from the outside looking in as somebody who spends a completely disproportionate amount of time, energy, and mental resources looking for and creating evidence of your failure and unworthiness. And when I look at your results, I'm like, they completely and utterly reflect this thing that you're ultimately trying to prove. And I say that not to, judge you and like push that down at you, but to say that whole thing starts with a choice on the standard of thought that I'm willing to continuously have. I agree with you that through life circumstances, through repetition, you've repeated the unworthiness part of that choice to the point where it's the default. But what I'm trying to highlight to you is there's really nothing broken about you, other than your indulgence in repeating broken thoughts. The choice you have, as you revealed when I asked you, who would you be if you couldn't think the thought that I'm a failure? You completely listed the action plan on what you would do acting out of a higher level thought, i.e., the person that I think you actually are behind all of the masks of the unworthiness that you told me right now. So how does all of that land for you?
Yeah, good. I just, the whole time you're talking, and this goes back, kids, you know, and I hate getting stuck on this, but this is my cement to this whole, and this wound has been there just a long time, but I did a lot of work, and I think I'd come to a point where obviously I got through. Now, when I had to leave my kids, and then I went back and I jumped the border illegally, I got to say goodbye to my kids, and then I was supposed to come here. Since that day, January 4, 2020, every failure attaches to the fact that what my greatest gift beyond anything else in my story is my ability to be a dad. I am an exceptional father, and that failure seems to like glue or to sounds like some sort of horrible attaches to. So whenever I see a failure, again, this compounding element comes in, because I'm quite good at understanding thoughts. I'm quite good with my practices to understand. So I know you're from when I was 6, or you're from mum, but with these kids, it blindsides me. And like you said, this choice of thought, it abandons me when it comes to this thought that I've failed my kids. And I know that that's just mine to understand, but it's heavy. Like really, like you're talking and I'm listening to you. The word kids is almost kids, and it's kind of weird for someone like me who's done this amount of stuff to be watching you and listening to you and have that playing out in the back of my mind. It's kind of painful a bit.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I can feel the heaviness of it. And what I would want you to consider is that maybe what's standing in the way of releasing that isn't the awareness of what's going on. I think you have an extremely astute ability to have the awareness of like how all these pieces interplay together. What I think is missing is to create the space to feel and accept that ultimately this is a narrative. You had circumstances that are very unique, traumatic, and completely justifiable for what you feel. But at the same time, it is what you added to that circumstance that is causing your suffering and also putting the brakes on your success.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that is something, as you know, you have power over.
Yeah. Yeah. That ultimately have power over. With everything else, I can always say yes to that one. I don't doubt I've got the power, but geez, am I clueless to seem to be able to find it. I think I've had glimpses of it, but I'm just making the wrong choices. You know, I'm taking so much action, and by taking action, I've got this, I think, this mindset that you're taking action, you're doing something, but sometimes you can be doing it very, very wrong. It can be very wrong. And I think that's where, when I said confused and stumble, this is where I'm at, is I've got everything at my disposal. There's nothing more I need. I just don't know which one to pick. You know what I mean? I seem to be confused at which direction to take, not what to do, and I don't need to learn anything. You know what I mean? It's there. I just can't seem to get that direction, and especially on the kids, on this word failure, and on children. Because what you said is spot on. You know, and yeah.
Yeah. So I would then bring it back to you. How would you coach yourself in that situation?
Well, there's certain tools I would use, but I wouldn't be convinced they work in this situation. I don't know. I've never had to deal with anyone in a situation like this. I guess I get too caught up in the emotions behind the narrative.
So the first spot that I would pause you at, right? Yeah. So ask you, okay, what would you do to coach yourself?
Yeah.
Your gut reaction to the default spot that your brain went to, this is probably not going to work.
Yeah.
So if that's the first thing that triggers in your head, how successful do you think you're going to be to deal with it?
That's not. Very simply not. It's not going to work.
Correct.
It's not going to work. That's I teach people that all day, every day. That's bread and butter.
So really what it comes down for you, like this is a massive case of
Yeah.
thought hygiene,
Yeah.
right? Like it's really having either, you know, somebody to facilitate the viewing, like we're doing right now, of all of the narratives you add to make yourself miserable, and or the highly diligent, like you taking a step back to filter those out. But everything right now that you're pointing to
Yeah.
always points to narratives that are completely aligned with the self-defeating actions you take, which all reflect, like your results right now perfectly reflect
Yeah.
your thoughts. Nothing's going to work. I don't know what to do. I want to save everybody so I can save myself. Everything that you pointed to, the results that you get prove that, right? So it's like, how can I do the thought hygiene work to make sure that I feel a higher standard, take higher standard actions that are aligned with the new results that I want, which then further reinforce higher standard thoughts.
Yeah. And look, the reality here too is that the space that you've given me is you're getting the truth. See, I'm also a master with I guess my life of being chameleon. So I can be incredibly happy on the surface. If I just play dad, you don't see any of this. You know what I mean? This only comes up, or if I'm doing free work where I'm just doing, you don't see any of it. This only comes in when there's, let's say, goal or career, you know what I mean, where there's a bigger part of it. And see, what I'm seeing now and what I'm having to do is I'm perfectly okay if I do nothing. So, so listening to you, I've got truth now as I'm sitting here and I'm having to tell the truth. I'm not just coping, I'm not pretending, I'm not acting. That's what I need to do also more of, because I'm very good at pretending everything will be okay. I just hide almost at the moment.
100%. Because if you do nothing and you gloss over and you cover, it still reinforces the core repetition of I'm a failure.
Big
If you
time.
were to
When
act in accordance with what you know you can do, it would shatter that whole belief. I'd have to walk around not being a failure. That's crazy, because it is the most familiar thing that I know.
Yeah, and like I'm producing, I challenge myself to do content every single day at the moment. So I go live on 3 platforms, same topic 3 times a day, and then I don't get any response. What do you think that does? Again, it just feeds this idea. And it's right. This is that where what actions am I taking? I'm taking action, so it should be working. And it doesn't necessarily work like that. And this is where I've got myself into, like, and you're very clearly pulling back the masks and the curtains and helping me see it, which grateful for, but also like it confuses the hell out of you. You know, for me, I'm like, what next? But I understand that this process right now is the opening of the veil. Where I go next. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, like we can't dive into everything, but certainly, you know, we can open up one loop. So just for the sake of like this container today, does that feel complete for you, or is there still something left outstanding?
Oh, no. It's very clear. And it's simple. And I think that's the best part for me, because it's what I pride myself in coaching, is that the simpler, the more likely it's going to be taken up the other side for change, instead of, you know, just painted over and it's a lovely story to tell someone else. I said there's confusion there, but that's not a bad thing.
Correct. Well, it's always right. The easiest person to lie to is ourselves. Like that's always what it comes down to. So yeah, I appreciate you showing up in this way. So if you can just close us off and, you know, kind of summarize your takeaways, your experience for us in your words.
You said it perfectly when you said thought hygiene. You know, I am very good at having a series of thoughts and almost coaching myself within my mind. The problem is we aren't able to coach ourselves. When it comes to things like this, it is probably one of the biggest mistakes a coach can make, especially the more experience we get, this belief that I can handle this. I've done the tools and I've been through this and I've dealt with my trauma. I've got this. I know what this story is. I'll go meditate it away. It doesn't work. And you said that in your workshop to a certain degree. There was a section there. And what I've realized today again is if I'm a failure at anything, it's being honest and giving myself space to actually be honest about where I really am at, and asking for more help, doing something about that way. Because, you know, I don't believe that alone I'm probably capable of this, which is not a bad thing. I'm comfortable in saying that.
100%. I think that was beautifully said. So thank you very much for that. And then to just kind of end this off, then you can let everybody know, you know, where's the best place to find you? Who's the best person to find you? Floor is yours for that.
At the moment, nobody. Let's leave it at that. Because the truth is, right now, at the end of this, I'm incredibly comfortable to say I don't want to coach for a little bit. I really want to delve into this. And that's why I was so keen to see you. There's a reason for it. This is, like I said, possibly a God moment. And I need to go away and have a really good long look at where I go from here.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty big realization. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you for your presence. And to everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.